This episode is brought to you by Meow Wolf. Come creative, leave creative. October is the Cosmic Howl at Meow Wolf Denver. Take our immersive experience and add a splash of strange enchantment with events, workshops, and other special surprises. Get your ghoul on with events like Adultiverse, where the wild things roam, only for the grownly on October 16th. Costumes are encouraged. Must be 21 or older. Learn more at meowwolf.com/cosmic-howl. That's meowwolf.com/cosmic-howl.
Hey, CityCast Denver listeners, before we get into today's roundup, I've got some exciting news. Next week, we're kicking off our fall member campaign, and we are so pumped. This is your chance to support the daily stories you love about our city. We're a small team, and it's your membership that helps us continue bringing the best of Denver. The official campaign starts Tuesday because we are off for Indigenous Peoples Day on Monday, but guess what? You don't have to wait. You can join right now at membership.citycast.fm and get a head start on supporting us. Plus, anyone who signs up gets to listen to the podcast ad-free. That's membership.citycast.fm. Thank you for being part of the CityCast Denver community, and we can't wait to see you Tuesday. Today on CityCast Denver, all eyes are on Colorado this week as former President Trump is set to visit a luxury hotel in Aurora today. So we're talking about the Trump visit, a super tight race to represent the North Denver suburbs in Congress, a controversial coffee shop's bankruptcy, and all the other stories that matter most. Oh, and watch out for some explicit language in this one. Just a heads up. Today is Friday, October 11th. I'm Paul Caroli, and here's what Denver's talking about. Welcome back to CityCast Denver, the show about the city that's preparing to host former President Donald J. Trump. I, for one, hope he loves it and stays for at least a month.
Oh my God, Paul. Why are you doing that to Justine? Just kidding.
So he doesn't go to the swing states.
Oh,
Hello?
I see. It's a strategy.
Hello?
Sorry.
Yeah.
You know, technically, you could get lost inside Gaylord of the Rockies for a long time.
I
have.
Yeah, it's happened. It's very big. It's like its own little city. That's very much not Aurora. Also, hello.
Could he be? Yeah, Justine, what did you think about that? I
mean,
think
technically Aurora, but
Westward pointed out
Aurora.
it's like 11 miles from where this supposed problem is happening.
What was Kyle Clark's tweet like? Feet outside of the Denver line, or just like feet outside of it. I think it's the original thing I heard is that they tried to get the Western Complex. But the Denver Coin Collectors Expo is in town, so the coin collectors saved us from having Trump come into Denver city
They're
limits.
my new favorite niche group.
God, Justine, I'm so glad you're here. I love that detail. I'm just going to stew in that. That's beautiful.
Shout out to the Coin Collectors
bless
Expo.
the Coin Collectors Expo at the National Western Complex.
Honestly, it saved your neighborhood from being full of people with Trump flags
That
on their
was
cars.
my thought. Just the traffic is already wild over there. I was like, oh, I don't have time for this. Even though it's a really quick stop. I think he's here for like 2 hours on his way to Arizona.
You think?
I'm pretty sure that's
I wonder what he was going to do, because I was thinking, like, is he going to be making other stops? Is he actually going to come into the city around this rally? Because it's right out by the airport. Is it? He might just fly in, go to the Gaylord, fly right out.
Yeah, that is from all of the things that I have heard from all the different channels, is that it is a quick 2-hour visit, and he's going to come in on his way to, I believe, Arizona or some one of the other Western
somewhere
states.
That actually matters for the electoral
Exactly.
map.
But and they were trying to get closer to Aurora, but I think that
they could have tried harder.
They could have tried harder.
It's not that hard.
I think a lot of people were concerned about Friday airport traffic and if that's going to cause any delays for people getting in and out.
Talk about
right off
airport
Pena.
traffic. Talk about Pena Boulevard. How about that?
Isn't he coming in on a PJ anyway? Is there just not a... I don't know.
It's probably a whole... how many people are traveling with campaigns these days? There's like press, I'm sure. I'm going to be there. I haven't told you this, Bree, but I'm definitely going to go. I cannot wait to see what this is.
You did not, because I just asked you what you were doing this weekend and you did not mention this.
I wanted to tell you here. I'm going to the Trump rally. I've been hearing about these things for 10 years. I think we're going to be looking back on this guy in 15 years and 20 years and think about this as a turning point for our country. And I want to see it for myself. I can't wait to talk to people.
You do. I mean, this seems like your element.
Yeah.
You do like to go talk to people in the midst of something wild happening.
The History Colorado people reached out to me. They were like, if anyone's from your team is going, like, bring us artifacts.
Oh, that's a great idea.
No, I
Isn't that
totally
interesting?
get that. Like,
get some pictures.
Yeah.
it's this phenomenon. Well, not as packed as it used to be, but these Trump rallies are a thing, that have been happening for all of this time now. And I understand the curiosity and wanting to go and see it for yourself. Bring back the artifacts of this phenomenon.
Talk to the people who drove in from, Elizabeth or wherever.
I'm not by any means comparing these two groups at all. They are not connected, but it's how I felt about, I had to go see an ICP show once because I had to see Insane Clown Posse for myself and meet the people that like follow them religiously. So I get it. It's like being in a moment, seeing what people are into, even if it's a thing you don't quite understand.
Yeah.
So good for you, Paul.
All right. We're kind of already jumping into it, but I'll introduce everybody and what we're doing here. It's Friday. We're here at the 5280 Magazine Studios doing our Friday news roundup, looking back at the biggest stories of the week. Bree Davies is here, our host. Hey, Bree.
Hi.
And one of our favorite regular guests, our politics and green chili correspondent, Justine Sandoval. Justine, hey.
How's it going, everyone?
It's going great. Let's get right into it. Actually, you know what? We have a little bit of business to talk about. I wrote this down, but I don't actually know how to talk about it because we just sold out all the tickets for this event we're doing next Thursday. I guess this is more about hype for the people who did manage to get the tickets.
Well, I would say yes. Okay, so we have this event on October 17th, the Town Hall Collaborative Ballots and Beverages. We're talking about what's on the ballot for Denver. We've got some really great guests. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think that's the focus, is like talking about this in a fun way, getting people excited to vote and think about the outcomes of this election. But like you said, Paul, we had a 100-person RSVP space, and you guys gobbled up those free tickets within less than a week. So I think I would just recommend getting there at 6 to grab a seat because it's going to be a full house.
Yeah.
So
maybe tailgate outside.
Yeah, I think they're going to have a food truck in the parking lot, so you can come eat and get drinks and hang out. But
also, just a warning. Speaking of history, this might be the last CityCast Denver event that is free. That's what I'm learning from this. Probably charge $5 next time.
I know.
If you got that ticket, enjoy it. Enjoy it.
But thank you guys for being so excited about it.
Yeah, I can't wait. I think it's going to be really fun.
I'm really excited.
All right, let's get into our top story here. We are less than a month away from the biggest, most important election of our lifetimes, as we all, people say, until 2028, I guess. Here in Colorado, the hottest race is the race to represent our newest congressional district. District 8 spans from up in Greeley all the way down to the Denver suburbs, Thornton area. The incumbent Democrat, Yadira Caraveo, is attempting to stave off a challenge from a pretty strong Republican candidate, Gabe Evans. He came out of the primaries looking very, very strong. The money's been pouring in from all over the country. The attack ads are on YouTube every single time I visit the site. Polling is tight. 9 News hosted them for a debate this week, the first of 2 that's going to be happening before Election Day. Justine, I want to start with you. Would you give either of them the edge right now? It seems really tight.
No, they are in a dead heat. I think the latest poll that came out, they were like split. So, it is anybody's race at this moment in time. And there's about 12% undecided voters that they have to make a case to by November 5th. So it was really hard to tell how this is going to play out, honestly. I
know you've been going up to this district a lot because you're working on your own campaign on this abortion measure at the state level. What are you hearing from voters? What do you think is mattering in this election? I think a lot of what is mattering right now that we know around the state is reproductive health care is one. Immigration is also the big issue. And that came up a lot in the debate too, and conversations around how it's impacting cities like Denver and other counties around Colorado. So those are the 2 big things I think in that area that people are reproductive rights overall across the state, across the nation. That's kind of
it's making some GOP folks really change their tone,
totally,
which I find interesting.
And they're bringing up a lot of like areas where they feel they can find common ground, like IVF. Or other areas.
That has been fascinating, the way the IVF issue has been matriculating through this political moment.
I did. As a person that
splitting the
looked
right
into that, I cannot believe it's gotten to this point. It surprised me.
So the messaging around that issue, like I said over and over, crosses party lines. It's something that people care about as a healthcare issue, and that's really shown, I think, and that could sway voters one way or the other. But really, in this district, it's hard because it's a massive district. Really, when you look at the way it's drawn, you have areas that are like Greeley, Northern Colorado, but then you have like Thornton, North Glen, who probably have some more similar issues and concerns as like the Denver metro area does, as opposed to some of these northern counties where
I have to say it's where a lot of folks I know who couldn't afford to live in Denver anymore eventually maybe ended up, or even their parents had made that journey 20, 30 years ago.
North side.
Yeah.
Because
Totally.
a lot of people I knew who grew up in North Denver like moved up that way to buy homes and raise families. So I think there is a lot of a different electorate the more south in that district you go, in the north side.
Yeah, I mean, and it's hard for journalists to cover. I saw a friend of the show, Ian Thomas Tafoya, former mayoral candidate. He was criticizing Kyle Clark for moderating the debate and ignoring environmental issues that are important to a lot of people on the southern part of this district, where folks are affected by Suncor and that industrial zone. Bree, what is sticking out to you in this race? Just like big picture.
I mean, honestly, it's the one race I've gotten ads for on YouTube. Of literally
and
so many. It's like probably 10 Caraveo to 1 Evans, which I think is probably a budget thing, is what we're seeing here. But that is initially why it was on my radar. I have I have friends that were asking me about this race that are not voting in it. So that was a clue to me that it was really getting attention from folks. But I think if I recall correctly, Caraveo's race in the last election was tight as well, right? I mean,
less than 1,700 votes
right.
is how much she beat Barb Kirkmeyer by.
So this to me says it's not necessarily the other candidate as much as it's an ideological which way people are going. Like it's not that it's not about Evans as well, but it could be insert GOP candidate here to me, which I found really interesting. Also, I think there's been some concerns with Caraveo's voting record when it comes to how much she is aligning with other Democrats, if I'm not mistaken. And I think what I believe she said, her explanation is like, well, exactly what you were just talking about, Justine. My district is diverse. There is a lot of constituents that I'm trying to represent. And I don't know if that's an explanation for why she was leaning more with the GOP on certain votes, but it definitely shows you the struggle if you have a diverse district. It's not just a shoe-in for, I'm just representing mostly Democrats.
We should talk about this point more because this, I think, is her biggest vulnerability, and it's specifically on immigration. Because when she ran 2 years ago, she was like, regular old Democrat,
That's
whatever
what I
the
thought.
Democrats stand for. And in the course of her 2 years, she's totally backpedaled, and she's recognizes she's vulnerable, and she's taking more and more conservative stances. Like she signed on to this letter that these Republicans were leading, And then in the debate this week, I just I don't know how voters are going to take this, but she was talking about how Kyle Clark asked her, how do you explain this shift to the right on immigration? And she said, it's what voters want. I'm trying to make decisions that voters want. And I'm like, normally an elected official will talk about their own values and they'll lead by example. They won't follow the voters' will.
It's more like my record shows this, or this is where I stood when I ran for this seat originally, and this is why I believe this.
Yeah, I think typically this kind of thing brings up like a trust issue. Like if the polls change, are your votes going to start changing? Like I don't know, Justine. I think this is maybe more your territory. Why is she doing this?
It's difficult to criticize from Denver because
Fair.
It's a lot different here, and I think when you're in a situation like a district like that, and you're trying to do the right thing and you're trying to be a representative of the people, walking that line becomes a lot more difficult. So I don't know, how hard that must be for her to navigate that. But, for a lot of Democrats, it has been a sore issue when it comes to immigration. I think over on her stance from, now it seems like she almost wants to say like, personally, I don't believe it, but I'm trying to represent the will of the voters that I now represent, that I've learned more about my district and what people want. I think it's difficult because overall what needs to happen is a compromise across party lines and less of like these ideological sides about like whether or not or pushing lies about like overrun cities of migrants and the hysteria, and really being serious and looking at this from multiple points of view. And so I think that kind of set her, I don't think, I'm trying to explain.
It's really complicated though, but I see what you're saying.
Hard to
I think
understand what she's
because
doing.
it's like, am I correct in that she is her family immigrated here? Like this is a personal
her
issue?
Parents, yes.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying is like, it's not that she's distancing herself from that story, but I think what I'm getting from the messaging is I've talked to my constituents and maybe it's not changing my mind, but it's kind of revealing the complexities of this conversation, which is there's the hysteria and then there's the reality of immigration.
Yes.
My question for you, Justine, though, is why is immigration an issue for this district?
Well, it's a huge issue for the district because you have Greeley, Colorado, and you have all of these other areas that have a lot of employed migrants from all over the world, because a lot of people think, oh, these are just, South American migrants coming in. But you have a lot of African immigrants who work in these meat packing plants.
I was just going to say
on these farms in
plants.
Greeley, and they're vital to the economy and they're vital to the labor force. You have some of these smaller towns that are now majority minority towns. I'm not sure if it's Fort Morgan, one of the Fort towns up there actually is now, there's a lot of that changeover. So it is an issue. I have heard too from Latino communities who are also concerned about immigration and, having their status being held up for years, and then, having issues with newer migrants coming in and being fast-tracked ahead of the line. So it's an issue that's impacting people across the line. Like, you're not necessarily anti-immigration or pro-immigration. It's the conversation of how we need to have comprehensive immigration reform in these communities because it's impacted in so many different areas in this district.
That makes more sense too. I think it helps to understand that this immigration is an issue impacting this district in the people directly, not the hysteria around what's happening. Like the Aurora conversation. Really,
she talked about it at the debate. She definitely talked about Denver and the Aurora conversation.
What did she say?
I don't remember exactly what she said, but she called it out as like, look at the consequences of immigration right now. We have to get this right.
I think it was a call out too on the federal government not doing what they needed to do and pushing it on to local law enforcement.
Because she signed on to that compromise bill, the bipartisan bill that Trump scuppered to make sure it was an issue in this election. But yeah,
it's such an easy.
Anyway, let's move on to abortion. We got to talk about abortion too, because that's the other one that I think is just so interesting in this race, especially Evan's position, which. What he's actually saying when he's answering the questions directly, it's very garden variety Republican. He says he's pro-life. He wants to leave it up to the states. But then he also talks about how complex he thinks the issue is and how there's so many different ways and individual circumstances. And I did a little research. I don't know if people know this about him, but this is part of his personal story. His wife has had 8 miscarriages.
Oh my gosh.
So this is a person who has had a lot of personal experience with reproductive health care. And I wonder how he would actually bring that into this office when this issue is so important.
I mean, I hate to say it, but I think that that's more common than people realize. And he's just actually talking about it. I would say, I don't know, Justine, you may have this similar experience where you have a friend who reveals something like that to you and you've known them for 20 years and had no idea they went through that. So that's interesting to me that he's being public about it. But I would just say behind closed doors, a lot more Republicans are dealing with this than we think they are.
I bet.
And I wonder if that will ever help change the tide, because the thing I struggle with that part of the abortion conversation is like all these exceptions instead of the reality is just access is access. Everyone needs it. We don't need to prove every single time why we need it. We just need it, whether it's a healthcare issue or a I don't want to have a kid issue or a health of the baby issue or a health of the mom issue or a financial. I mean, there's so many things, and that's what makes abortion so complicated. And I find it interesting that Republicans are even willing to say that kind of stuff.
I mean, you don't hear him say it a lot.
No, and that's what's surprising to me.
I think he might feel it. I think he might actually think this because the policies he's putting forward are, like I said, very Republican. He's saying the things he needs to say to keep the Trump endorsement, to make sure he can get the base out. But he's got this personal story that makes me think in office, this guy might not actually be such a firm opponent of these things.
That's totally the thing. And I see a lot of Republicans like getting there close. Like, yes, this is why we need no limitations. Pregnancies are unpredictable. This is part of
It's healthcare.
a piece of a medical procedure that's part of the healthcare of the reproductive cycle. But it's that untrustworthiness with him for me. Like, because I kind of see, he's there on things, but it's that mega endorsement. It's the
fear.
Fear of going against it, which makes me skeptical of this person being able to go in and not be influenced by that in Congress and actually do the right thing. Like, a moderate Republican or old school Republican would stick to those values without being, beholden to the mega cult.
Mm-hmm. And there was a moment in the debate.
Yes.
You're thinking of the same moment.
With Kyle Clark, where he refuses to answer Kyle's question about Trump's statements on immigration.
The specific was Evans's policy proposal was, he says, undocumented immigrants who have committed a crime should be deported. And then Kyle Clark pushes him and says, but Trump has said he wants all undocumented immigrants deported. Do you support that plan? And then Evans refused to answer twice.
Twice.
He's afraid.
The thing that, to me, if I was a voter and I was more right or conservative leaning, that fear in him is not what I want in a leader. And I would find that at the very least bit off-putting, at the most, like, I don't trust you to be a strong leader because you're afraid of Donald Trump.
Totally
It's interesting.
agree.
They have the same vulnerability, though, because Yadira's got this thing where she's abandoning the lefty principles.
Yeah, and
she's afraid of missing out on the
It's because that district shouldn't be drawn that way. That's why.
I think
That's interesting, though, because, like, in an ideal world, a diverse district would be a boon for a candidate who had to constantly figure out how to make these deals work. But in the reality of it, it's party to party. That is I wouldn't want to be there.
One interesting thing that Kyle Clark had called out Gabe on when he mentioned his grandfather's service in World War II. And then Kyle Clark brought up the fascism of Donald Trump and that if his grandfather would approve that. And he still couldn't go there and be like, no, fascism is wrong. Or
Yeah, that was a weird moment. He was like, I always call out racism. I was like, okay.
But you couldn't do it, bro.
It's so weird.
You couldn't call out not hitting kids in
the not
school.
hitting kids thing. I was
Lord.
I know.
Come on, just say no.
My spidey senses as a mom are automatically like, well, fuck that guy. Sorry. You think that people should be able to beat their kids and in school? Okay, goodbye.
I think those are the two moments, that moment when he was like deer in headlights, couldn't figure out to say no, it's not okay to hit kids in school. And then the Caraveo side coming with the abortion stuff, got those sound bites too. And I think those are the two moments that I walked away with that made him look like, ooh.
It was very interesting. It's only going to get more interesting too, because here's the fundraising, and we got to move on. But the fundraising is Caraveo. She's raised $4.5 million so far and only spent $1 million. That means $3.5 million more YouTube ads are coming. And the same for Evans. He's raised $1 million and only spent half. We're going to keep talking about this race, but right now we got to take a break and come back because we got maybe an even juicier topic to get into after the break.
This episode is brought to you by the Denver Film Festival. The Denver Film Festival is back from November 1st through the 10th, and it's your chance to experience some of the biggest films premiering in Denver before anywhere else. Obviously, a giant fountain, Coca-Cola. Can't not do that. Popcorn. What am I talking about? Junior Mints. Hi. The best. It's the only place I eat. The only time I ever eat Junior Mints is at the movies. It's like that's where they belong. You know what I mean? But here's the best part. It's not just about the blockbusters. The Denver Film Festival is your opportunity to discover hidden gems you might never get to see anywhere else. We're talking indie films, groundbreaking documentaries, and emerging directors. This festival is packed with unique stories that will stay with you long after the credits roll. So don't miss out. Head to denverfilm.org to grab your tickets and get ready to immerse yourself in 10 days of incredible cinema. That's denverfilm.org. We'll see you there.
Hi, this is David Plotz of CityCast. Have you thought about a gift for yourself this year? One that has the power to help you grow and learn and become a better version of yourself? Give yourself the gift of language by getting Babbel. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by language experts, Babbel gets you talking a new language in 3 weeks, because talking is the key to really knowing a language. And that's how Babbel approaches it. It's designed for real conversation. So I have a trip to France planned with my girlfriend. Was it inspired by the Olympics? Yes, it was. And it's given me the chance to revive my old high school French. And it's so fun to catch back up with the vocabulary I'd forgotten, to remember all the food. For example, I'm in a lesson on ingredients, so I'm going to make crepes with butter and sugar. Avec sucre et de beurre salé, on va se régaler. We're going to have a feast. They learned this great new French expression too. J'en ai l'eau à la bouche. That means I have water in the mouth. That means it's mouth-watering. Love it. Love French. Anyway, Babbel gets you talking, and studies from Yale and Michigan State University and other leading universities prove that it works. So here is a special holiday deal for CityCast listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for CityCast listeners at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast, spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
All right, and we're back. Our hot topic today is the end of an era. Amid a booming coffee market, one Colorado-born coffee chain has fallen apart. Business Den reports this week that Inc. Coffee is bankrupt. The owners blame the pandemic, but maybe it has something to do with the uproar Inc. sparked back in 2017 when they put out a sign in front of their Larimer Street shop with the slogan, "Happily gentrifying the neighborhood since 2014." I remember this as a massive news event. This got national news. This
It was
sign
in the
sparked
New York
a
Times.
huge uproar. I think we were all three of us were there
We
that
were
day for
all
those
there.
protests.
Yes.
Bree, do you want to start?
Oh my God, Paul. I just can't even. I was doing all the research to go back and relive this moment that we all lived. But okay, so for folks that don't know, Inc. Coffee is a coffee chain that started here.
Aspen.
Ski bum from in Aspen started his little coffee cart, brought it to Denver, and I will say, I remember it early on, way prior to this, as just being the very expensive coffee place. I would love to go back in time and see how it compares to everything else, because it probably was not that much more expensive, but there was something about it that was like, it's expensive. And it, in this moment in particular, it became to a thing that identified gentrification by screaming the quiet part loud. But yeah, so they were a coffee chain here. I think they had over a dozen locations.
There's one on the 16th Street Mall, I remember. I used to go there a lot.
I used to go to this one over by Commons Park by Zengo. Do you remember Zengo?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that place. But it's in a neighborhood that we know is statistically 5 points. It has been rebranded as Rhino. And that was even before this, the rebranding with Rhino and the struggle and the tension over that. But this company, Inc. Coffee, hired a marketing firm, and they made this sign that said, "Happily gentrifying the neighborhood since 2014, put it out on a sandwich board. And I believe it was Rue Johnson, of all people, took a photo of it, threw it up on Twitter, and was like, "WTF, everybody." And it exploded.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, there was something bubbling for a long time, and we'll get into the protests and like why we came from all sides of the city to like unite over, become a transformer over this like anger. But yeah, it was a sign. It was a simple sign, but it was saying the quiet part out loud, and it exploded.
Justine, what was your experience of that day with the protests?
Where was I on the day of the sign? I remember that day actually very vividly. Our offices were over on Sherman Street, and I was working, and I was on Twitter, and I saw Rue Johnson tweet that, and I think I was like one of the first people to see it, because it was like 10 seconds had gone by since she posted it, and I was like, what the F? Because the location of that Inc. Coffee is right in the Curtis Park neighborhood, and it's like my entire family lives within 1 block, basically, of that place. So I knew exactly where. So it was like personal, and it was kind of like you said, it was like this moment that just like was this match on like this tinderbox of
resentment.
It was
10
already
years of
happening.
resentment.
10 years of resentment, anger, feeling ignored, feeling shut out of a conversation about Denver. all of us that showed up there had been talking about this issue from our various perspectives, neighborhoods, or
Was Crush still open? We were in
It
the middle
had
of the
just
Crush.
closed.
Yeah,
Cold
Because
Crush
there was
had just
there
closed.
was a quote from Musa Bailey, the co-owner of Cold Crush. He
that
said,
added to the tension.
I think so too. But he said, he's talking about the rent is too expensive. This was in The Guardian. Gentrification has totally affected me. It made it harder for us to operate our business. The rent is too expensive in the neighborhood. This historically was the neighborhood where graffiti artists would practice. The ink sign is saying that gentrification is a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, he took it personally, like a lot of people
It
did.
did. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
that day I saw it. I ran down there right away, took my own picture, started like posting about it, and then the next day when I went back, I think it was Thanksgiving Eve.
Yeah, I remember it was
if
the
I
week
remember.
of Thanksgiving.
And so I went down there because I was already going to go to the neighborhood, and I was still living in the north side at the time. Extra details, but I drove by, and I was the first person to document that someone had vandalized it the
Written
night
white
before in
coffee.
the morning. Yeah, and then from there it just kept escalating.
Well, and I want to give some context for 2017 too, because this is like the Ditch campaign had begun, and this was the fight.
The I-70 widening.
Yeah,
fight.
the fight
Mhm.
against the I-70 widening and the community activists that were organized around that. Less than a year earlier than this, all the artists were evicted out of the Rhino Art District because of the ghost ship fires and the hysteria around that. So like that's where I was coming from. Bobby Lefebvre's North Side Play had become a web series. I mean, we were all, Tay Anderson graduated from high school, I think in 2017.
He was the one that organized the protests.
Yeah.
I read in the coverage. From
But it
the
was
time.
this moment where we all came together from fighting different aspects of this conversation, like you know, from the neighborhoods, like from the art world, from just all these people that were working on a similar issue about Denver, finally had this moment where we actually all just came together and were like, yeah, fuck this.
Fun fact: the organizing planning meeting for the protest was at the Tix Club.
Oh, your family's bar.
Yes, that's when I think I first went there.
Everyone came to the Tix Club, and we planned out our protest.
There you go. So let's talk about what happened with that movement, because that was a consolidation. That was like a real lefties would call it a praxis moment where like something became real. And a lot of these people went on to get elected to office or run for office. Candy Sedabaca, of course, represented that neighborhood. Lisa Calderon has run for mayor twice. Aonte Anderson ran for the school board. Kayvon Kalatbari was involved in this.
That was in November before the mayoral elections.
Yeah,
as well.
How do you all feel like that movement has? It's 7 years later. What's happened?
I think we just went on to continue the work we were doing in our own sort of, not bubbles, but communities, and continued that conversation. I was looking through, so I have this box of buttons. I'm like a pin collector, and I found our Denver Community Action Network button. This was an anti-gentrification conference that came out of that moment that we Justine and I and a bunch of other people co-organized. I found this Nancy peeing on the Rhino Art District button, just like thinking about all these movements. But I would say that Tay went on to serve. Candy went on to serve. Lisa continued. She ran twice. She's continued to be a vocal critic of the mayor. And I think that, I think it's like what happens in a lot of movements is there's a pinnacle moment and then people go in and start, I don't know. I just noticed the conversation changed after that, I guess. And I felt like people who weren't necessarily involved in the conversation around gentrification were more involved than ever. And I think it just mobilized folks to pay more attention. And the outgrowth of that, I think, is hard to measure, Paul, I would say. But I mean, it's part of the reason I have the job I have today was it helped mobilize me to create a podcast, because I knew people wanted to talk about Denver in person, in real life. And that I started my podcast the next year after this happened in 2018. And it kind of legitimized a little bit of our grievances too, because it was like a corporation. It was just like people didn't want to talk about what was happening while it was actually happening. And this made it like, okay, we have to talk about it. We have to talk about what it means to gentrify 5 Points, what it means to be a North Sider, what that all means, and how. And honestly, I think it broke open some conversations that allowed people into the conversation who necessarily didn't know how to enter it because they were new to the city, but they wanted to be part of the community too. And I think it was ultimately a good thing in that way.
Oh, yeah. I feel like one thing that happened is the businesses around there got in line with making sure that they weren't going to do something like that because they saw the backlash. Well, we were protesting. The coffee shop across the street was
Crema.
bringing us,
I remember
bringing us coffee and saying, we're like trying to be
And I think
friendly and not
yes.
trying to gentrify. And so many businesses took a cue from that and really started to reach out. I had so many of the businesses reach out to me to do like anti-gentrification trainings and do like help with the community more and donate and be a lot more present because it was kind of just happening. And as in the community, my family's been in that community 4 generations. There was a lot of grumbling and feeling, just like
ignored
steamrolled.
Yeah.
And this was just that moment when it was just like such a slap in the face. Everybody just spoke up. And yeah, it changed everything, I think. But ultimately, as developments kept moving in and growing, it's like beyond us now. Like,
That's what I want to talk about because you all are saying we. I have to say I have never identified as part of this movement. I have always felt like an outsider, like a reporter looking at this and analyzing the politics, which are fascinating to me. And for me, what I see in Denver politics is that gentrification, that single term, is no longer the motivator it was in 2017. I looked at Google Trends for the word gentrification in Denver. I recommend everybody take a look at this because you can see a chart where it's growing slowly for 10 years leading up to 2017, a huge spike, and then a slow decline to where it is today, where I don't think it was a big issue in the last mayoral campaign. I think we still talk about the issues connected to gentrification a lot.
I think
we
it's
talk
about
evolved.
displacement.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about development. We talk about housing prices, the cost of living. We talk about rent, but we don't talk about
retaining culture.
we don't.
And
I think that it's we've moved on a little bit from that term though. I think it's
I
a
agree.
little bit a relic of the 2010s,
Yeah.
and it's just not as important anymore.
Well, I think because it became such a like lightning rod of a word that then all of it, what happens is it loses its meaning. And then, but I agree that to me, it didn't get replaced as much as it evolved into deeper conversations about what affordable housing means when you say affordable housing. Now people are more apt to push back when someone says, well, they're going to build affordable housing over here. What's the AMI? Who's going to be able to get in there? Like, I think it helps people realize we have to get beyond those shocking words and say, okay, then what does my community want? I'm thinking about the conversation we just had this week with Councilwoman Jamie Torres. She's, to me, as a direct result of that conversation is like, cool, we know gentrification happened. What do we do now?
Yeah.
How do we retain the culture that's there? How do we not erase what's happening? How do we keep people in their neighborhoods? And that was not the conversation in 2017. It wasn't about keeping people in their neighborhoods. It was about, why are you doing this to us?
Well, I think also gentrification has this like unique, like the word itself, like it ties so many things together. Like there's racial connotations, there's
Yes.
socioeconomic connotations, and it's all about real estate, which is already so emotional. Like I think that moment collected all those things and with a gut punch, and now we've disambiguated all of them again, and we're having the debates individually with individual cases. Like all of these tensions are still alive here in Denver, like you said, with the Cronky Town development, with Park Hill Golf Course. Like that was essentially a gentrification conversation that the perhaps you might say that was one of the legacies of this movement. Like
100%.
Candy Sadabaka was one of the biggest critics
Yes.
of that development, and it went down.
Yeah. And I think that to me proves that there was power in that movement. And but something about the word, I want to talk about the word again because so this company with the marketing firm Cultivator was the ones that made the sign. And in Denverite, they said Denverite quotes them as saying, the messages were meant to be, quote, a cynical perspective on the rapid development of our Rhino District neighborhood, which to me is so telling because they called it
Such
their Rhino
fools.
District neighborhood, and all of us are screaming 5 points at the top of our lungs about it. We quickly and painfully realized, however, is that we uncovered an enormous blind spot on the true meaning of gentrification and its most legitimate and honest interpretation. it's such a fuck you. This statement to me is like, we literally don't have to worry or care about this, but like, sorry, we hurt your feelings or whatever. Like, it's so.
Their offices were in the neighborhood. They're next door.
How have
They were,
you
like,
not
there.
heard? How have you not heard that gentrification is a bad word? How have you not heard that?
This is why you need diverse staff.
That's what I thought too.
Different
Just as I
perspectives.
thought, who was at that table when who signed off on all of
Yeah.
that marketing?
We know.
I would have been
We
like,
know who it was.
let's
We
not
know.
do this.
Like,
I don't know how many meetings I've
literally
been in, I'm like-
anyone.
It's still shocking that it happened. What about today, though? Let's talk about today. Like, this is a moment where we had expectations of a company, and the company let us down. And now we are having this conversation still. I mean, we talk about it every Pride, corporate sponsorships. What are we expecting these companies to do in terms of like being leaders of moral values or ethics or like social, advancement? Do you feel like those things have changed what we're expecting from companies like Inc.?
I think this is part of the social media conversation too, and that like we have become more apt to be vehicles for advertisements for things like this corporate spot. I don't know. To me, it's more complicated today than it was in 2017. Like influencing and all these kinds of things that are also selling our city in a certain way. And I've been thinking about it a lot with the influencer conversation. I don't know also what has changed for companies. Has much had to change for them? Because, well, I don't know. I mean, Inc. is going out of business. So clearly they
people stopped going to Inc. I think they
Yeah.
are hyper aware of how they're portrayed in these spaces.
Well, and I shared this with you, Paul, when I posted on Instagram that they were going bankrupt. I got, I think, 50 messages from people saying, good riddance. Hell yeah. I've been waiting for this for how long? And it didn't happen overnight. That's the thing is like, it didn't close down Inc. in 2017. It took, 6 or 7 years to get here. But clearly that marketing campaign had a lasting impact.
I wonder, though, the Business Den article said that they made a huge investment in expansion in 2019, that they portrayed this as just a bad business move. They made a $2 million investment in the company, and it was right before the pandemic, and then the pandemic kind of killed it, which also makes sense. However, I have also not shopped at Inc. since this event. I can't imagine doing it. And I've wanted coffee and walked past one and been like, damn, I wish I could go in there, but I just can't bring myself to do it.
They replaced the Starbucks in Cherry Creek Mall, and I go down to the Nordstrom Cafe because I will not get coffee from Inc.
I just can't. Yeah, I can't do it. I remember there were like "Don't Drink Inc." T-shirts on Etsy, like during this time. So it was a whole movement behind that. I don't know if this just speaks to they make bad business decisions, and that was one of them. And these bad investments later on also speak to that. So. It just is a pattern, a series of patterns.
Two bad moves. Two bad moves. Listeners, I want to know what you all think about Inc. Has this conversation changed for you around gentrification? I think that's the most interesting thing for me right now about this. I'd also love to hear people's experiences of that day. If you were there, let us know. Call in on the Stink hotline, 720-500-5418. The Stink hotline is open. Again, text us your name, your neighborhood. Let us know how you feel about gentrification and Inc. coffee going down. 720-500-5418. We got to go to another break, and then we're going to come back and do wins and fails of the week.
This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. October is the season for wearing masks and costumes, but some of us feel like we wear a mask and hide more often than we want to, at work, in social settings, and around our family. Therapy can help you learn to accept all parts of yourself so you can take the mask off, because Halloween masks should be part of a fun costume, not your daily life. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Take off the mask with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/citycast to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/citycast.
This episode is brought to you by Financial Times. When it comes to voicing or acting on our opinions, why are some people more confident than others? With the Financial Times, you form your own opinions with conviction based on unbiased and trusted reporting. FT journalists tackle global issues with an impartial and rigorous mindset, providing the facts and analysis that you need to make up your own mind. Make up your own mind with Financial Times. Visit ft.com/the journal to read free articles and subscribe.
All right, we're back. Best way to end the week, we're going to do wins and fails, aka Rocky Mountain highs and lows. Each of us brought a recent local something we think is a win for Denver and something else that we think is a fail, and we're going to talk about them. We're going to do fails first, and you know what? I'm going to go first. Cue the corny Elvis fun in Acapulco music. We're talking about Casa Bonita. We got an email from listener Carly Y about Carly's experience.
This is crazy.
At the new reservation system. So Casa Bonita just recently switched over, and now they're doing regular restaurant service with reservations. And
did we talk about what it was like to get in that queue? Did you? I don't know if I was on that show. I don't think I was here the day that the queue opened.
Oh, just like tens and tens,
42,000 people
yeah.
in front of you in line. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, this person, our listener, got one of those reservations.
Yes, Carly got one. And we know from our, a friend of the show, Joshua Emerson, who we'll hear a little bit more from later, that this inside of Casa, he's in the gorilla suit sometimes. Be nice to the gorilla. They were worried about this. So here's the email from Carly. Carly says, so I'm not seeing this anywhere in the news, but I had a reservation on Friday at 8 p.m. And when we got there, a gigantic line was formed outside. Everyone in line had reservations. Someone near the front had a 7 p.m. reservations and was still in line after 8 p.m. We left and went to eat somewhere else because we weren't interested in eating at 10 p.m. and they close at 10:30, according to their website. They made way too many reservations and they need to implement a time limit with guests where there will be a lot of unhappy customers waiting forever to get in. I think it's important that people know that their reservation doesn't really mean anything. It was pretty disappointing. We went to Lady Nomada in Belmar instead, and they had excellent food.
This kind of feels like what they were worried about all along, right?
Yeah.
It was why there was this year-long test reservation
one of the reasons.
systems.
This place is complicated.
Why is this so hard? I don't understand.
I know. I think that's the hard part, Justine, is like all of us have been there prior to this experience. And like, I will say in the 80s, I remember waiting in the line down past the Big Sur Waterbed store to get in.
But like, a line.
Yeah. So there's always a line, but like, why is there a reservation system if there's a line?
I think what's happening is people are making reservations and then people are staying inside for different amounts of time.
Oh, so there's
a capacity limit inside this place. Because what are you going to do? You're going to go find the 7-year-old at the middle of the puppet show and say, oh, 3 hours is up. Get the hell out, Tommy.
Also, precedence has been set. You could be at Casa Bonita all day if you wanted to. I mean, many of us, I remember being dragged out of there after my mom's like, we've been here for 5 hours. Like, we can't be here anymore. So I can see where people would not either expect a time limit or maybe even adhere to one.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to.
I wouldn't.
I want to spend exactly as much time in there as I want.
I wonder if this is going to institute then some sort of like bracelet thing where it's like lights are on, green bracelets have to leave, red bracelets can come in.
They could go that direction. They could do it with all the shows too. They could be like, you're seeing the 6 p.m. puppet show and the 7 p.m. Sorcero. You're going to go to the Cliff Divers. And, those are the things that you paid for. They could go granular. They could make every single, they already did this with the seating, making the seating around the cliffs and the divers more expensive than the caves.
Yeah.
Which maybe was the right move, but like you could totally see this going super, like just monetizing every little bit just to keep it organized. Or the other direction, go back to the 70s or probably actually the 90s. I can't believe I know so much about this damn restaurant. But the 90s when it sucked and it wasn't as much demand. And so it was just kind of more lawless and free. That's another route.
I don't mind the food that much and I love the lawlessness, but
just get the chicken tenders. That was the key last time.
That's what I did. I started ordering off the kids' menu.
Did y'all see they did a new menu update too?
I heard.
I want to try the new stuff.
It's not going to be. I don't know. I don't need to eat street tacos at Casa Bonita.
I haven't been back since they switched to restaurant service. I'm optimistic about that. The order at the table, get the food delivered to you. That seems like a plus up for the food. Although they compromise the other thing I love, which is the line and the tickets at the front.
I just can't get over that. I need the line.
Casa Bonita.
I know.
Casa Bonita. Justine, what's your fail?
So my fail, I know it's not exactly Denver, but I am a Denver, right, who experienced this week, but it was price gouging during natural disasters. I have a really good friend, and she was in St. Petersburg, and I was trying to help get her out to evacuate this week. Luckily, she made it through the storm. She's okay. Her apartment took some damage, but we found out about the hurricane and evacuation stuff Sunday night, and trying to get a flight out for her was insane. United flights from Tampa, we all know Tampa flights aren't that much, for like $1,200 plus to get on a plane. And then she had no car, so we were desperately trying to get a rental car. Prices were insane. Gas.
Brutal.
Tried to get her a hotel in Winter Haven, Florida, and they were asking $900 a night. So it's just, one of those things when, we're not in a situation like that in Colorado. We're looking like, why don't people just evacuate? Why don't people do these things? But it takes resources. And, when we don't have, when we have companies taking advantage of
It's really
people's
dark stuff.
disaster. So it was something I was stressed out about this week, trying to help somebody across the country. And so that was a big fail for me, is these price gouging on.
And I bet a lot of people are
disasters.
experiencing that, because I have friends who have family in Florida right now, and they're still trying to figure out how to get them to a safe place.
Sure. I mean, yeah, we experienced our community, Louisville fire, very similar.
Oh,
People know these feelings. I recommend anyone out there who's thinking about the what happens, to the economy, to politics after these disasters, to go read Naomi Klein's book, The Shock Doctrine. Really opened my eyes to this kind of thing. Watch out for privatization in the wake of these disasters we're seeing, the hurricanes. But Bree, let's go to you for a fail.
Okay. Well, my fail was maybe going to be the fact that I did get into the Secret Jack White show, which was amazing. However, he just jumped on a show that was already there, this Japanese noise band at the Bluebird.
This is Tuesday night.
500 seat capacity room for Jack White. Like last time I saw him was First Bank Center. So this was a big deal. And he's doing this tour where he pops up and plays in small places. But he had to jump on a show that was already there, Acid Mother's Temple. These guys rule. They're like a 90s sludge noise band from Japan. You don't get to see them a lot, but I found out that people that bought tickets to that didn't get into the Jack White show. They didn't get any messaging. They got there and they got refunded and were like, sorry, you can't come in and see the band that you paid to see.
Dang.
Which it's not Jack White's fault, but like I felt so bad for them also because Acid Mother's Temple ruled. Like they were incredible. They were amazing. So fail for AEG on doing that to people and not just letting them in. But I guess my real fail is I got to do this cool thing this week called the Celebrity Crossing Guard, where I got to help kids cross the street at their schools. And I was talking to the crossing guard I was working with, Hannah, who does it every day. She's a social worker at Valverde Elementary, and she also does the crossing guard job. And she said, no one stops for me. I stand in the street with a reflective vest and a stop sign, and people will just speed right past me. And she's like, I'm just trying to get kids to school safely. And it's just another one of those reminders, please slow down, especially in a school zone. It just was unreal. And I watched it happen with my own eyes. I watched people speed right through while 5-year-olds were trying to cross the street. And I just think this is a cool movement to have this Celebrity Crossing Guard moment, but it needs to be every day. These folks need support.
That makes me so angry, and I believe it because earlier this week, I watched people blow the stop sign of the bus while they were picking up kids in the morning, and I was like screaming my head off, like, what is wrong with you?
And there's like flashing speed signs, slow down, and people still don't slow down. And it's just like, if you don't slow down for kids,
it's a culture right now. I see it everywhere. And I know that I like to complain and old woman waving her fist at cloud, but it is really bad. There's just like this like inconsideration that people just have about
other
driving
humans
and danger. And
I think there was an article this week about how terrible our driving is.
Yeah. Wallet Hub says we're the 11th worst city to drive in.
I believe it.
Yeah. Let's move on to good stuff. Wins. I'll go first. I'm going to dedicate my win this week to a listener, Kenny M., who I met at the RTD forum on Monday night. Really happy to meet you, Kenny. Thanks for saying hi. So this one goes to a new movie called Elevation, because it was shot entirely in Colorado, which is rare. Colorado doesn't do a lot of film incentives in our state, so we don't have a lot of like big Hollywood productions coming here to make movies. The last one that was this big was The Hateful Eight, which I think, I don't know how you two feel about Quentin Tarantino, but I think that one is pretty good in his filmography, and I love watching it for the Colorado scenery. So this new movie, Elevation, starring Anthony Mackie and Marina Baccarin, it looks cool. It looks very Colorado, and it's got a very Colorado premise. It's called Elevation, and it's about like a sci-fi alien invasion situation where like these aliens don't kill you if you're at higher than 8,000 feet. So Anthony Mackie and Marina Baccarin, like they need some medical supplies from the hospital in Boulder. So they have to go below the elevation line and risk death. And it's like The Quiet Place kind of people behind it. And that's what it looks like. So I'm excited to see beautiful Colorado scenery on the big screen.
Is it at the film festival or is it just playing here?
I don't know. It opens on November 8th wide, I think. I mean,
Cool.
This is a big movie. I don't know if they're going to do it at the film festival.
I like anything that shows Colorado
I
to the
know.
rest of the world, personally.
It doesn't even look like my kind of thing, but I think I'm going to go see it just for that.
I mean, I do the same thing you would. I'd go to see, like, what do I recognize?
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff I like to see.
Yeah, we're going to see the Flatirons. We're going to see, Folsom Field. We're going to see, I don't know.
Yeah.
Justine, what's your win?
So I was gonna highlight the Broncos whooping that Raider, but
They're
on
looking
Sunday,
so good. 3 wins in a row.
It was a happy moment. I haven't been paying as much attention to football as I have in the past, but like Broncos Raiders, that's like holiday game. The whole family was there. But that was actually not my one, but it was top of the week.
Damn, I thought we were going to get into it.
We can
I'm
go
ready.
back. I mean, we can choose. But my high of the week was that the Denver Post endorsed Amendment 79, which, there have been some Post endorsements, Corey Gardner, that I haven't agreed with in the past. But this was a big win because I can think that, the Post endorsement kind of solidifies the messaging that we have been on the abortion rights movement have been pushing for a long time, that Coloradans see this as a medical issue, that is a private decision between a person and their doctor, and that we need to enshrine that right once and for all in Colorado. And if you have a chance to read the editorial, it actually is a very good editorial that really highlights why this is important for all of Coloradans and why people should vote for it in November.
And 79 is the campaign you're working on, to be transparent.
Yes, to be
Okay.
transparent. But yeah, so people have been working on this issue, though, for many, many years to get to this moment. And I think that, this moment is just like a combination of all of this.
It's a
work
national
that's been
moment,
done.
too. I mean, it's a Colorado vote, but we're setting
and
precedents
We're
here.
one of like 13 ballot
Potentially.
measures, 12 in the country that are trying to do something similar. So it just being in this movement for a very long time to get to this point and to have the Post give us such like an amazing endorsement, really, I think it's just a good moment for me personally. I'm like, yes,
You've been doing this
I'm
work for a
happy
long
for
everybody's
you.
time.
really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Everyone's
Cool.
really getting the messaging. Like we all worked so hard to get here, and now not everyone, but a lot
People
of
can
people
read it
understand.
and learn more.
We'll put-
55%.
We'll put a link to the endorsement in the show notes, and then also the link to the episode that you two did
Yes.
about the history of
If
abortion
you want to know a
rights
little bit
in
more about what
Colorado.
Justine was just talking about.
Yeah, in the show. It was a great episode. So, Bree, take us home. What's your win?
Artcade opens this weekend. I can't wait. So Artcade is a super cool, it's an arcade made out of arcade games and that are from local artists. And it's like over 85 artists have contributed to this. So you might play an old school pinball game that's been retrofitted with another artist's work. My friend Karma Lee did this beautiful pinball machine that looks like a lowrider, just like the colors. It's gorgeous. But also you can play a claw machine, and all the prizes inside are individual pieces of art. And it's just this really cool way for me, like that allows folks to support local art who maybe don't feel like it's something that they know how to dip their toes into yet, because it's just like going and hanging out at an arcade. It's at 1555 Champa. It's like transformed an old retail space there temporarily. There's gorgeous signage out front by Odd World Signs, my friends that do original sign painting all over the city. It's right under if you know where the giant pencil is downtown, the giant pencil sculpture, it's right below that. So if you see the giant pencil, Artcade is right below. $12 gets you 40 tokens to play games throughout there. And also they have like they had artists make prototypes of like plushies, and they had those made so you can go to the claw machine and get these like plushies made by local artists. My friend, actually our mutual friend Joe, made mutant Beanie Babies that you can win. So he like took
Oh my
apart
God.
Beanie Babies and re-put them back together into these like mutant creatures.
That sounds incredible.
They're amazing.
I had so many
I
Beanie
cannot wait to
Babies.
check this out. It's one of the things I'm really excited about.
It's so fun. I'm not sure how long it runs, but it opens this Saturday at noon. It's from the folks at Understudy. A friend of the show, Thad, who's been on before, is one of the curators of Understudy. Understudy is a part of the Denver Theater District. So it's just this really cool way to get to know local art while also just having a really good time hanging out at an arcade. It's a cool thing to do, I would say, like Saturday night, go and do that before you go to a show or go out to dinner or whatever. It's just like spend some money and hang out for a little bit and play video. Oh, there's also original video games in there made by artists from scratch. So you can like play video games that they've created.
I will beat them.
Wholesale.
I will win the games.
There are like 3, Paul, that you could try that you've never played before.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
So it's so much fun. They've done it for a couple years, and it's one of my favorite things that they do. And also it's all ages. So it's great. I brought my 3-year-old and he had a great time.
Well, that's a great win. And we're going to have links to that and everything else we've talked about in the show notes. So if you ever want to read more or watch the trailer for Elevation, check out the show notes. This has been so much fun. Justine, Bree, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Hi, this is Josh from the north side. Some of y'all call it Berkeley. Recently ranked number 2 by 50K 80 magazines. That's a flex. I bring that up at dinner parties. Long-time listener, I just wanted to invite y'all. I'm doing my native comedy show, Bad Indian, October 14th at the Bug Theater. I would love to invite y'all. I'd love for y'all to come. We're going to have fry bread, native comedy, and premiering this documentary me and my friend made. Put a lot into it. Really proud of it. I just hope to see some of y'all there. Bye-bye.
And before we sign off, just a quick reminder, our fall membership campaign starts next week. But if you already know you love CityCast Denver and want to support our show right now, you can sign up to become a member at membership.citycast.fm. You'll get access to our show ad-free and keep us bringing you great local stories every day. Thanks again. We'll see you Monday. We'll see you Tuesday. We're not doing the show on Monday. We'll see you Tuesday. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. Our producers this week were Olivia Jewell-Love, Francisco Kilgore, Lizzie Goldsmith, and me, Paul Caroli. Peyton Garcia and Adrian Gonzalez write our morning newsletter, Hey Denver. Bree Davies is our host. Our music is by Los Mocochetes, with additional mixing by Tyler Lindgren. If you haven't already, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at CityCast Denver, and tell Anthony Mackie about us next time you see him. You can sign up for that daily newsletter I mentioned and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. See you Tuesday. Membership campaign. Do it. Sign up. It's coming.
I asked ChatGPT about me and Ink Coffee, and this is what it just spit out. Justine, a Denver-based activist, became connected to Ink Coffee when she documented and highlighted the protests against the company's controversial happily gentrifying sign in 2017, which appeared to make light of gentrification in Denver's historically Black and Latino Five Points neighborhood. This sparked outrage, protests. Sandoval captured images of the vandalism and protests, and her work helped amplify the community's response to the incident.